Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our young guests down there. Good afternoon. Today, I'm going to talk about magic or science. You decide. It depends on when you were alive. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago, something that was science may have been considered magic. And then all of a sudden people realized that it wasn't so much magic, it was real. But what we're going to talk about today is basic aerodynamics. What makes an airplane fly? Well, here's the magic part. We'll talk about Icarus and Daedalus, two Greek gods that a father and son that decided they wanted to fly, and they took feathers and wax and fashioned themselves wings, and they flew. But what happened? Does anybody know what happened to them? They flew too close to the sun and the wax melted and the feathers fell off and they plummeted into the sea and died. That's a myth. Magic, not science. There's a description up here on the screen by George Cayley, the 6th Baronet in England. And if you look at the date, you'll see that he was born in 1773 and he died in 1857. But this man figured out all the forces that create flight. And yet, there were no airplanes in that period of time. There was nothing. How did he figure it out? He was a scientist and he applied himself and he figured out what makes a bird's wing fly. And he came up with the 4 forces that act on a wing that create flight. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The 4 forces: thrust, drag, lift, and gravity. Gravity is also considered weight, but most people who deal in aerodynamics don't usually say weight, they say gravity. So we have thrust, drag, lift, and gravity. Here's a cross-section of a wing showing the 4 forces that act on the wing. Thrust is what makes the wing go forward. Drag is what tries to keep it from flying. Gravity, which is always pulling down on the wing. And lift, which is what the wing creates because of its shape. The shape is what actually creates the lift. If you look at a wing and look at the bottom of the wing, if you were to measure from this point right here to this point right back here and go this way and go this way, you'll find out that the top is longer than the bottom. The distance from this point right here across the bottom to this point is longer, or shorter, I should say, than the top. It's shorter than the top. But what makes it fly is an interesting concept. As the wing goes through the air, it splits the molecules of air. I'm taking this down to its basic parts. 2 molecules of air strike this wing at the same time on the leading edge, the very front. One goes over the top, one goes across the bottom. The laws of physics state that those 2 molecules of air must meet together simultaneously at the other end. There's no way in the world that they can't do that. It just happens. So for the molecule of air going over the top to meet the molecule of air going across the bottom, the one going over the top has to go faster than the one going across the bottom. Now, that distance is very small, and that speed is pretty small, but it's just enough to create a low pressure area on top of the wing. The faster the air goes over the top, the lower the pressure is. The slower the air going across the bottom, the higher the pressure is. So that wing is always trying to move into the lowest area of pressure. So it's going up all the time. That's what makes an airplane wing fly. It's pretty simple, but it took a lot of people, a lot of years, a couple of centuries, to finally make a wing that would actually fly. And I guess most people should know that the Wright brothers were the first ones to make powered flight. Now, there were some people that built gliders that they could ride in, and they could glide for a while. But the Wright brothers were the first ones to have powered flight, and they figured this out. They were the first ones. And they also made a wind tunnel, and that's where they tested their wing. They tested that wing in the wind tunnel. Here's an airplane, and it shows the the four forces acting on the airplane as a whole, as opposed to just the wing. It's pretty straightforward, no different than the previous slide. I was going to have a video up here, but I'm not going to show the video because it basically does the same thing that I just did. It explains the four forces on a wing, how it flies, what makes it fly. But we can look at this right here, and this is what I just explained to you just a couple of seconds ago about the air going over the top and the air going across the bottom. Notice the bottom, the shorter distance, the top's a longer distance. The higher the velocity of the air going across the top, the lower the pressure. Across the bottom, it's going slower, it's higher pressure, and the wing continually tries to move into the lowest area of pressure. It's kind of like water seeking the path of least resistance. If you pour water on something, it's going to follow the path of least resistance. A lot of things do that in science. Electricity follows the path of least resistance. So do liquids, and so does air. Now, what causes the airplane to move around in the air? They have different control surfaces. There are three major control surfaces on an airplane. The control surfaces on the wings, on the tips of the wings, you can see them flipping up and down. Those are called ailerons. And they act in opposite direction of each other. They can never move in the same direction. They always move opposite of each other. One goes down, the other one goes up. This is what causes the airplane wings to tip and causes the turn. As that aileron goes up, the air hits it and goes up this way, which causes the wing to go down on this side. The one on the opposite side is going down, so the air hitting it on the bottom causes it to move up, and that makes the wing tip. To make a coordinated turn, you have a rudder back here that moves like this, and that in conjunction with the ailerons is what makes the airplane make a coordinated turn. And then you have the elevators in the back on the sides of the tail structure. Elevators work together. They either both go up simultaneously or they both go down simultaneously. And this is what makes the nose go up and down. So you've got one control, the rudder, which turns the airplane like this. Then you have the ailerons, which tip the airplane this way. And then you have the elevators that make the airplane tip up and down like that. So there's all three axes of flight that make the airplane move through the air. Aerodynamics is a very simple concept. But why did it take so long for somebody to figure it out? And a lot of people tried to figure it out over the centuries. Leonardo da Vinci was working on trying to figure out how to make things fly. He actually had a concept that he'd put on paper of a helicopter. Of course, he never built one that worked, but he had this idea of how these blades flying around over the top of an object could pick it up and put it back down again, even though he was never able to accomplish it. It took more and more people over the centuries to finally come up with the design. And it was merely by looking at a bird's wing, because the birds have the most perfect aerodynamic wing design that there is. But there are other animals that fly. Bats fly, and bats do not have aerodynamic wing designs. All it is membrane attached between their arms, full length of their arms and their body and their legs. And rapid movement causes them to lift up into the air. Of course, they do have hollow bones too. They don't have solid bones like we do, or we could come up with an idea like that. It sure would be great to be able to fly, wouldn't it? Just put something on and you could just start flapping your arms. We just don't have the muscle power to do it. It doesn't work that way. So that is, in a nutshell, basic aerodynamics and what makes an airplane fly and what causes lift. There's nothing magic about it. It's just pure, simple science. Madam Toastmaster.